Hi Dale, welcome to Al Insights. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
The purpose of getting together today is to talk about things that first-time founders will find interesting about your journey and the resources that you bring to the community currently. And I think the nice place to start is your background and how you got here.
Yep, awesome. The 1 minute version, 3 minute version, what do you want?
Let's take the 5 minute version.
Okay, there you go. So I'm one of 9 kids. We're recording in Bountiful now at Builder Studios, and I grew up in Salt Lake, West Salt Lake. And when I was a kid, I loved bikes. I loved bicycles and BMX and whatever, and we'd ride our bikes downtown. And when I was 14, I tried to build a bike. And I disassembled everything, a road bike, painted it, and got it mostly reassembled, but didn't finish it, left the project. Then when I was 16, I built a mountain bike, and I actually finished. And in that process, I was searching for parts to buy online, actually. There were internet forums. This was 1997, so you could go on the forums.
Pre.com.
Yeah, so .com, but like pre-eBay. Right. So I'm on mtbr.com, and there's a guy in Utah that's selling bike parts. So I learned about the cost of a rear derailleur and shifters and things like that. Anyways, there's a store in Salt Lake that sells salvaged bike parts. No, they sell salvaged freight, and they could have anything, serving, equipment, sporting goods, whatever. And I'd go to this store because there was a food wing that sold expired food and just whatever overstock food. And when you're growing up in Rose Park with a big family, your mom will shop at places like that, right? Or may. And they had this other store, and I went to that store and realized that there were a lot of the same people every time. So I caught on, like, what are people doing here? And they were selling things online. Internet forums, there was a Norwegian guy, that sold a bunch on eBay. And so I was making $60 a week as a janitor at the time, and thought, oh, I could try, buying something, whatever. So some of the early items I bought were bike shifters, road bike shifters. $25, and on eBay they'd sell for $150.
Wow. So
you'd 3, 4, 5, 6 times your money pretty easily. It was really great. I had to get a bank account. I got a bank account, and
how old were you when you started this?
16.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got a bank account, and they gave me an overdraft, $500. And when I learned what that was, I'm like, this is amazing. Now I have this free
You're in
money.
business.
So I essentially, I grew that up to a few $1,000s in inventory, about 10 grand actually. And then I got my dad involved. He would take all the pictures for me, mostly to help. And then he started listing things, and I gave him a percentage of sales. Like, hey, he did this, and I gave him a percentage, and we were doing great. I went on a mission for my church, a proselyting mission in Portugal. Okay. And then when I got home, started doing the same thing. And buying, selling, making a few grand a month. I had an eBay account manager, and they said, oh, what do you want to do with this? And in my mind, I didn't think that I was going to make it. I wouldn't do it for a living.
Right.
I actually started, for 9 months, I did a stint of multi-level marketing, selling vitamins, direct sales. And then I rode my bike from Canada to Mexico, and when I got back, I realized I probably wanted to, if I am not an entrepreneur, I won't be able to do that kind of adventure again. Right. So I was really hooked on this idea of freedom. So I talked to my dad, who had a job change at the time. We're probably in 3 minutes of this 5-minute story. I talked to my dad. What do you think? Like, should we just go into business together? We always wanted to work together. And it came out that if I could get him $3,000 a month, that he could quit his job.
That was his magic number.
$3,000 was what it would take to cover the nut at the house, living with 6 kids in Rose Park. And so we did that, and within 6 months he quit his job. We just became 50-50 partners. I made $1,500 a month because I didn't pay rent and I lived at home.
Right. And
we went into business together. So year 1 we did $250,000 in sales. That was in 2004 to 5. So we started in 2004.
And that was all still sourced
eBay from NPS. Well, that was the issue. Was you could only buy and sell so much. Anything you could buy well, and I was a great buyer. my skill set lended well to like, this looks valuable. You know, even in high school, I this surveying equipment, really $80? Sell it for 500. I had a lot of things where I had a good feel for, I was so curious about everything, so I would buy different things to just see how they would sell, and I became a good buyer. So fast forward, year 1 we did 250K, year 2 we did 550K, and I found out about bike swaps. So bike swaps were bike shops would go to a big event venue and then sell all their stuff. I'd sign up as a vendor so I could get in early, and I'd spend $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in cash buying out the bike shops there. So
and that was
our
last year's
supply.
inventory. That's how they were liquidating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So then, fast forward, we'd go to Interbike, a big bike trade show. Hey, you know, will you sell to us? No way, I'm not going to sell to you. You don't have a storefront. You don't have a real website. You're not a real company. You know, your eBay name is Dale P. Majors. You know, we eventually rebranded to Bike Wagon, but I'd go to these shows and realize that, wow, like we're scrubs and we don't know what we're doing and we have no clue. But they would give us hints, you know, you would need this to sell, you would need this to work with us, and yada, yada, yada. And slowly, over a few years, we started becoming more workable for them.
Right.
And then we bought a lot of their industry closeouts, and we eventually, 250K, 550, 980, 1.4, 2.9, 4 million, 5.5, 7, 8, 10. We finished. We were just over 10 million in revenue when we sold in 2015.
What made you sell?
So I wanted freedom. I went to one kind of interesting lunch conversation I had in 2012 probably, was I met this guy who had quit his job at 30. He'd quit working at 39, and he'd accumulated about $1.5 million in his stock account. He had no debt. His home was paid off. And he said, if I invest very conservatively with dividend stocks and other things, I can make at least $40,000 a year, and that's all I need to live in Salt Lake.
Right.
So he quit his job. He started volunteering and whatever. He had 4 kids, and he called it his point of choice. And for me, I thought, wow, with $1.5 million, $2 million, if you were to live conservatively, you wouldn't have to work anymore. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Okay.
So I'd always talked. The company that we sold to, we almost acquired 2 years previously. Okay. But when we sold, we had $3 million in inventory, and with that, you have $1.5 million bank loan, and you have $600K of accounts payable, and you're just like, it's always tight. There
Right.
was just some stress around it.
Right.
We made sure to keep our asset to debt ratio pretty healthy. We were always at least above 1.4.
And did you learn that organically, just running a business?
Just learned it organically, yeah. And I was a pro, and I actually never finished school, but I was in school for a long time. I have 21 credit hours left if I wanted the degree. But I stayed in school for a long time and was really good at seeking out mentors.
Okay.
Mostly like, hey, you're really smart. I'd love to meet with you. Could you come see my business? Can I take you to lunch? And in those calls, I'd just kind of lay out, like, here's what I'm doing, here's what I've done, here's what I'm doing, here's where my head is. What do you do? Like, if you're me, what are you thinking in my situation?
Right.
And then I would, do my best. I'm not great at shutting up, but I'd do my best to just listen. And those were helpful. So I had a lot of people invite me to networking events or whatever. I would like engage and learn from others.
So I'm pretty engaged in the startup community. Primarily, I spend a lot of time with Jeff Erickson at Founders and Funders. We meet a lot of first-time founders, and they're pursuing their dreams. One of the questions that as an angel you're always asking is, what is your exit strategy? And it sounds like once that seed was planted for you, that I have sufficient success, that I have now kind of unshackled, maximum freedom. Mm-hmm. Do you have some insight for founders as to kind of where to set that golden ring? Because, a lot of people, I spend a lot of time in the Bay Area, and everyone's swinging for the fences. Everyone mm-hmm. wants to have that unicorn company with that incredible exit. Whereas I think many businesses, if you get out at $10, $50 million, that's a huge win. You've got economic development, you're set, as long as you don't have aspirations of Lamborghinis. Mm-hmm. do you have some advice on kind of that counterbalance and kind of rational expectations?
Well, for every $1,000,000 you have at 4%, that can, if you invested okay, could get you $4K a year or $4K a month.
Right.
Or $40K a year, let's say,
right.
Whatever. And, you might invest well, but I realized that as a business owner, I was also a terrible investor. When you're running a business, you're good at running the business, you know your things. But then to go out into other private deals, it's amazing how often I meet people who have made terrible investments.
Right.
Just because you're great at running a business doesn't necessarily mean you'll be great at investing capital. So
you've got really sharp domain expertise.
Yeah. So, I think it is funny that people, that may not even have 50 grand, set aside, want to have $50 million. Where it's like, it's a big disparity.
Right.
It would be nice even to have, what if you had a few $100,000 of just cash, or even 100 grand of cash and some investments and just whatever. Like, it'd be a meaningful thing for anybody to just have a net worth of a couple $1,000,000.
Right.
And this all or nothing, I don't like a lot of the all or nothing. Like, hey, we need to have tons of money, more money, more problems. A little bit.
Right.
You have, I don't know. Yeah. So as far as counterbalancing, for me, I've always been interested in I like freedom. I want to be able to. I love working. I'm a workaholic. I love working, and I want to always work. I just don't want to have to work.
Right.
So I want to be able to say this is a worthy endeavor that that I want to spend my time on, and I can do it just for that, not because it's going to yield a certain amount of money, make me wealthy, whatever. So I think getting really clear on your values, on what you really want, not what other people may want for you, or what you want to show off to others, just like what would make you and your family more, secure and happy.
Great.
And then put the blinders on and just do that, and it doesn't matter.
I like that focus. I just want to step back and double click. So what created the desire to do that North American bike trip?
If I didn't have such good parents, I would have wanted to run away as a kid. I've always had like an adventurous streak.
Right.
I love the idea.
So wanderlust is strong.
Yeah, I like adventure, and I'm lucky because my wife loves adventure too. But so yeah, we said I did that, and then 2 years later we rode 3,500 miles through Europe, and 2 years later I got married, and my wife did a little trip along the coast. So every other year for most of my life since then, I've done some sort of. Last year we did a 3-month trip through Europe, from the Mediterranean to the North Sea up and over the Alps.
Any advice for people that like doing those kind of trips? Because that sounds like a pretty adventuresome trip, and it's also, it's kind of carry what you live in. Not a lot of baggage on that trip, right?
Yeah, it's just you have your bike with all your bags, and you're, self-sustained. I wrote a guide that I share. If I type Bike Tour 1 in my iPhone or computer, it gives the Google Doc. So if anybody emails me at dale@ventureanyway.com, I will send them the bike touring guide it's a live document that we're putting together. Someday we'll make it into a book, but I love travel by bike, and we've probably spent a year doing that.
That's wonderful. We'll put that in the description. So, having built a $10 million business, do you consider yourself, have you learned a lot about e-commerce? Is that an area of expertise just from the trials and tribulations?
Yeah, and I sold it, and I was pretty involved in it until 2017. Sold the company, stayed involved for another almost a year. I would, I'd go to a lot of different e-commerce conferences. I'd speak at some, but it's so fast changing and I'm even involved in e-commerce now with Grand Trunk. In 2020, we bought Grand Trunk. 2021, we bought A-Light Designs. And then 2022, we actually bought Builder Studios, the co-working space.
Right.
So I'm still involved in e-commerce, but I do not consider myself an expert. Jack of all trades, high level, sure. Like I could guide you, but man, it's a big field. And
just for people that want to learn more about this, you have a consulting firm as well. Is that correct?
So I do, yeah. I have a coaching company that really my emphasis is an entrepreneur community where we have different products inside that support entrepreneurs, mastermind groups, networking. My main shtick from a coaching perspective is the more other business people you know that can't sell you anything, the more likely you are to be successful.
That's great. Yeah, because I guess you have the benefit of the wisdom of the crowd.
Yeah, wisdom of the crowd, and you're staying in the driver's seat instead of, being dependent on a coach to kind of like drive for you or keep your hand on the wheel. And just, I don't love that codependence that can be created with, I'm just going to spend money to try to solve my problem.
So what brought you to the brands that you currently have now that you're selling online?
I went through, when I sold Bike Wagon, a friend of mine who maybe thought, Dale, you're not really as self-aware as you need to be, or hey, this is a good time for you to rediscover yourself. I went through a year-long process with a group, kind of like a coaching group that was based in the Lipton Strengths Finder.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time figuring out, like, who am I? What am I great at? What are my natural skills? What are my weaknesses? Where do I want to spend my time? And for me, I thought, I love entrepreneurship. I want to champion entrepreneurship professionally. Personally, I love travel, and specifically family travel. Like, it irks me that people say, oh, when I have kids, I won't be able to adventure so much. Like, I don't like that, and that's kind of a thing in the outdoor industry. So you just need to get a dog instead, or whatever, because you can't have kids. And I really like family. I've got 6 kids myself. I come from a big family. I did this business. I've worked with families. I'm just a family guy. I've really enjoyed family connection. So I wanted to have a family travel company. So when Grand Trunk came available, I thought, oh, that's a great platform to create a family travel company.
Okay, and tell us a little bit more about Grand Trunk.
Grand Trunk sells hammocks, camping shades, camping chairs, different outdoor gear.
Okay.
Our main customers are places like Bass Pro Shops, a bunch of independent specialty retailers in the States. But yeah, Bass Pro, Cabela, Shields, larger like specialty retailers. But then we work with a lot of great specialty outdoor shops.
Cool. And what other brands do you have?
We rolled A-Light Designs into Grand Trunk. But that's another brand we own, is A-Light Designs. So
okay, what products?
They were the original maker of the lightweight camping chair.
Okay.
So similar to Helinox.
Very cool.
So
we've talked a lot about, you have a different way of kind of managing not so much your work-life balance, but how you work. Mm-hmm. We've talked about, you like standing desks, the way you utilize an executive assistant. You want to unpack that a little bit and tell us about some of the things that you've done to kind of maximize your engagement and happiness around your work drudgery?
Well, I would say that I never sit down. I'm sitting down right now. But when I work, I don't have chairs in my offices, just standing desks. I've done that for my brother's 3 years ahead of me, but I've done it for probably 6 years or so. And so I think there's this idea of like time management or energy management. And things like here in Builder Studios, we have the table tennis table or the workout equipment or the climbing wall. Like, I think that there's a lot you can do to just manage your state. So the idea of like, I'm going to be in front of a computer for 8 hours, your energy and output may not be as high. So a lot of times especially during COVID, I'd work for a few hours, and after a 4-hour work, outing, I would go on an hour run.
Okay. And
then reset and then come back. So building in, fun throughout the day, like that's kind of a thing. So I cut out added sugars and, have kind of become a bit of a granola that way. But I love the idea of like feeling energized.
Right.
So sleep, eating good food.
So managing your energy is such an important core part of the way you run your business, your mind.
Yeah.
You've built kind of the perfect home in Builder Studio. So what brought you to buy the building, and what's your vision for it?
Yeah. So a long time ago, have you seen the Ninja Turtles movies?
I have.
So the original one where Shredder had to hang out with all of his like criminals, where there were like video games and skateboards and
right.
that kind of place. I thought, man, that's really cool. I don't necessarily want to participate in illegal activity, but I really do love a cool like
take a nugget of wisdom.
A cool place. I love the idea of having a cool place like that. Even 5 years ago, I think I made a post on LinkedIn like I want to have a space like that someday. So that was a seed in my mind. But I'd love to have a big space with all the things I like that I may not build out on my own. So like in here we have a golf simulator upstairs, we've got a podcast studio, next door is a rock climbing room, we've got a fitness area upstairs, table tennis, we have a lot of amenities. Right? So I wanted to create that. So when I walked through this building, and that was, so actually the 45-second story of that is a buddy in my neighborhood, his mother-in-law owned a co-working space, shared office, 10,000 square feet. Hey, does she want to sell? Yeah, she wants to sell it. Great. We rented some offices in there. We're renting 2 small offices. Oh, that's kind of cool. Negotiate to buy it. It gives me a killer price. And I'm like, you're my friend's mom. I want a great deal, but I don't want a killer deal. So let's look at comps and see what like a fair above-the-board deal is. And when I was looking, I found that instead of 1.8 million bucks, I'm like, your cap rate, it should be worth 2.8. So I'm like, I'm not going to buy it for 1.8. Then she wanted 2.1 and then 2.3. But I saw, which would have been more fair, but I saw this building for 2.5 times the space and less than what she wanted. So I'm like, I'll just buy that and I'll just, make it here. And I'm buying it for cheap enough that I can have a rock climbing wall and build out all these things that I want, where if it were a lot more money, I'd have to really be focused on monetizing every square inch of the space.
And if people are interested in learning more about the studio, how do they contact you?
Builder-studios.com.
Great.
Yeah. But it's been really fun meeting all sorts of people. Like even you and I, we have this conversation. You've got a space here with Jeff, and I don't have to pay you. You don't have to pay me. We're not employees. We can just be friends. Like, hey, it's good to see you, and that's it. Like, it's nice to have those work relationships. If you own an office building, or you go to your place at work, there's some sort of like relationship. Yeah. I love having just a bunch of loose, like, hey, it's cool, great, high five, Yeah. It's been fun.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun because I know I did a presentation here during Tech Week last year. And it was good to see, 30, 40 people coming out. And there's not a lot of engagement north of Salt Lake. Yeah. So this is a special place for that. Yeah. And we're going to have a lot more. And I hope to have several more locations from here to Ogden. Like long term, I'd be very open to having a few more. That's great. So, what advice do you have? I spend a lot of my time, as I mentioned, talking to first-time founders and coaching them because my background, equity research analyst and investment banking, and then fractional CFO. I'm always encouraging founders to put the foundational pieces in place. So as they kind of figure out what their vision is for their business, when they're talking to investors, it's well received and it's professional from a financial and accounting side, from that structural side. Mm-hmm. What are some thoughts that you have for first-time founders with, trying to get that idea more cogent and trying to help them understand both their own vision and how to articulate that to others? Do you have some thoughts there? Yeah. So establishing their own vision and how to tell the story for others. A lot of I'll half answer your question if that's okay. But a lot of my philosophy is that you can definitely go and say, chase money or an idea, or no, I need to make this and do this thing, and even if there's not a ton of alignment. I really like alignment. So I want to figure out, what do I love doing? What am I great at? What am I really good at? That I verify with other people, You're not self-delusional. Yeah, not be delusional, but be really clear about, whenever I've done this, I've had peak experiences doing that. Here were the conditions that existed in this area. For me, where people are trusting me, where there's a bit of chaos, where I have to synthesize a lot of information, make quick decisions, where I can feel kind of adventurous. I do well in that kind of thing. Don't need all the information to make decisions. I can be pretty decisive. I can influence others, bring people in. I want to put myself in situations like that. And everything, when I do that and I'm in a situation where everybody needs that skill from me, I do a lot better. Right. When they need something that's, very much out of alignment with that, things don't go well. Right. So I think you can get more credibility learning that early on and then applying yourself, even if you're I'd never done a co-working space before, but I was great at managing a budget and being frugal because I'd bought $20 million in bike parts. Right.
at the right price. So here I can buy all of the chairs for $10 each instead of $100 each, or all the office equipment for $40K instead of $250K. Like, it transferred well. So my partners had really high trust and confidence in me because I've just done all of that stuff before, being scrappy, making decisions, and how well did I answer a third of that question?
I think that's pretty good. Have you ever raised money from other people other than banks?
No.
Do you have partners? So you have business partners?
I do. Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how you pick those partners and how you work out challenges?
Yeah. So one was working out challenges. I'm a big believer of it's hard to say the wrong thing if you feel right in your heart. Like if you feel the right way towards something, it's hard to say the wrong thing. Because even if you do say the wrong thing, they're going to understand your intent and your feeling and who you are. So I think aligning yourself with good people whose values kind of align with yours. My brother and I, we've worked and we've had so many fights, both verbal and physical, that we know how we work now. We just kind of know. And I know that he's a good guy who I respect for certain things. He's more tactical and a better manager than me. And I'm more like the synthesizer, big picture, crazy idea. So even though a third of my ideas, half my ideas are terrible, he can see past that because I've had good ideas in our experience before. So we work really well and we have mutual respect. Our other partner, Andy, he's very confident, very savvy. And just on top of that, he's a good person who means well. So when we've had style issues and everything else and fights and whatever, I know that he means well and the kind of person he is. We've done several family trips beforehand and we kind of knew that, so even if my wife coaches me, very early on in the relationship, different struggles that we had, she's like, Dale, I was like, oh, Andy did this. Dale, you did that to me. You actually, sorry, don't get hurt, but you do that to me all the time. Like, wait, really? So I make you feel that way? Yeah. Oh, okay. Just being understanding of people and maybe having healthy sounding boards that aren't going to keep you delusional. So through partnerships, I've actually become, a lot better person. Marrying my wife and having her go back and forth with me, I'm like, wow, I'm way less of a jerk now, having been married. I am. And through having business partners, I'm a more understanding, I think I'm a better person because I've had to work with people in changing, in just adapting with people and understanding them.
Right.
So finding out, I guess going back to the first thing, it's hard if you have the right heart or the right feeling towards somebody, good intent, it's hard to say the wrong thing. My partner Andy, he's very candid. And that's just how he works. And I've learned a lot from that. But at first I'm like, well, that was actually really rude. But he had no ill intent in saying it wrong. He's just he's direct. He's a great communicator and being very direct. So finding good people.
You mentioned you have a lot of ideas. Some are good, some are bad.
Mm-hmm.
So how has your pattern recognition matured around identifying the good or bad ideas, or how far do you run with them before you put one to bed?
Yeah, I used to be excited about everything. Oh, this is so great. And actually, I still am, and I think that's a good attribute for somebody like me to be. I have a really high bias for action. I'm action-oriented. I do things. A lot of times, and I'm pretty low on strategy, actually. So a lot of the lessons that I've learned have been through activity and action and iteration. So I iterate a lot. Sometimes as I've slowed down to be more thoughtful and strategic, I don't know how much that's better or if it is even better than just the old-fashioned Dale that just, that did things that moved. And even though it was an ugly process. So for me, actually, a lot of my internal affirmation and rallying cry is action, movement, and it's okay to look like a goofball. Don't worry about it, because over time, you always have pretty good results. Where if I'm too worried about what other people are thinking of me or how it's going to appear, or I want to get it right, then a lot of times I don't create as much value.
Great.
Because I'm not that smart in that way. I do think I have good processing power, but I've done so many dumb things that I'm like, wow, that's But I've had through action and just repetition and quantity of things that I've done, I've had above average results than other people. So Yeah, I've kind of, that's just more how I'm wired. I wish that I were more, I would probably benefit from being more strategic and wired in different ways, but that's not the hand I was dealt.
Right. What's kind of the perfect avatar for someone that locates at Ventures or Builder Studios?
You know, people that are lonely, just kidding, I don't know. Business owner trying to build something aspirational, wants growth and progress, and that person would then be surrounded by other good people that they can, bump into, and as we do more and more events, I think that person would benefit. As opposed to somebody set in their ways, I don't really want to socialize everything else. Like, there are plenty of offices where you can do that, and for less,
Right.
There's cheap one-off offices in other people's conference buildings, so you can rent without the community, so.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your time today. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you.
Any last thoughts?
I do have one more thought. I do. The idea for entrepreneurs, the thing that's helped me the most is the idea of never arriving. And that, for me, as an entrepreneur, instead of thinking it's going to be really great when I sell this business, or it's going to be really great when I make this much money, it's going to be really great when we finish that thing. For the most part, like, every day is kind of great. It's never going to be like really, really great. I've enjoyed, like, if you can't find joy in the journey and have like great days, then it's probably never going to be really, really great, because you always find another thing that eludes you. So I've really tried to adjust my expectation to, I'm an adventurer, I'm an entrepreneur, I love solving problems, I love being with people and working through issues, and that's what I do for a living. I'll do it till the day I die. That's what feeds me energy, is, solving problems, creating new things, and that's, if I can do that day in, day out, then I'm happy, and I'm arriving just by doing that.
That's great advice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.